Done.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back for session 2 of the veneered box. So if you remember last time, we glued up our end pieces and our side pieces, and I've taken the time to take them out of the clamps. And remember, this lighter side is going to be the interior of our box, and this darker striped material is going to be the outside. So I took them out, but one thing that I did that I wanted to demonstrate was you want to take the tape off before you start sizing all of these up. Now, a little trick on the tape here is you want to go ahead and peel it if you can get it started, which I'm having a hard time doing.
Hey, Doug, I wasn't able
Yes.
to join last week, and I noticed that you did say the two sides of the MDF are different colors. Were they the same variety of wood, simply different pieces that were deliberately dark on the outside and light on the inside, or are they different
No,
wood?
it's two different species of wood.
Okay.
And before the, not today, but before the whole series is over, I will identify both species of wood for you.
Okay, great.
Okay. But what I wanted to highlight was we have to tape this down to hold it in place on the substrate before we put it in the clamps, so the veneer won't shift around when we are moving it in our calls. So you want to go ahead and peel this, but you want to pull it back at a 45-degree angle, because that way you have less chance of tearing the fibers on the veneer. If you just ripped it across the grain, the fibers of the veneer would lift with the tape, because don't forget, these have been under great pressure and have set overnight. So this tape has become part of the veneer. So I want to pull this back like this. And again, I want to pull this at like a 45-degree angle. And believe it or not, just that little bit makes a difference in how we can pull the veneer off, the tape off, without tearing the veneer. So we're going to get all of this veneer off.
Doug, again, wasn't here last time, but I watched your video. It was like an 1/8 of an inch overlap on the sides. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Okay. And then we have that overlap. So what do you think we're going to have to do with the piece before we could go start sizing everything up? So we made, again, we made the veneer an 1/8 of an inch overlap on our substrate, and we made our substrate a 1/4 inch oversize on what our final fit pieces are going to be.
Are you going to use either a scalpel or the veneer saw on both ripping along sides and cross cutting, or do you use a different tool for each type of cut along the edge of the substrate?
Very nice, Travis. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say that again, please.
Somebody made a comment. Go ahead.
You'll use your razor blade, probably.
Sometimes you have to use a razor blade. So the point being is, it really depends on the species of veneer. Some veneers are really a little thicker than others, and they're more fragile. And what you learn as you work with each species of veneer is each of them have their own qualities as you work with them. Some are more brittle on cross cuts than others, but what I like to try to use is my veneer saw to start with. So I'll hold this at a slight angle, maybe a 15 or 20-degree angle, because I'm going to trim this side off, square it up later anyhow. So I'm going to take this along the inside of my substrate, and what I want to do is I want to make sure that I get one edge of the substrate as flat as I can that I could put up against the fence. So I could start to have a reference point.
I'm
Now,
sorry, when you said fence, are you talking about you're going to take this over to the table saw?
I'm going to take this over to the table saw and we're going to start squaring these pieces up.
Got it.
Now, sometimes you get a little variation in the veneer, like Chris said. Good point. Sometimes we can just take the razor blade and trim any little excess off. It doesn't have to be a perfect cut, but we are going to put this up against the fence on the table saw, and we're going to square this in, and then we're going to turn them all around, and then we're going to cut this in. Let me back up, sorry. So we're going to put this up against the fence, and we're going to trim this side. Now that we have a square edge here, we're going to turn it. We're going to put this square edge and trim it to our final width as we go along.
Okay.
Now, for the final width, we're going to actually run all four pieces through at the same time because we want all four sides of the box the same width. Okay?
And so, Doug, these were all oversized. None of these was cut to size beforehand.
That is correct. I intentionally made these oversized
Okay.
on the overlap of the veneer as well as the substrate. And when you work with veneered pieces, you should always, always, always make them oversized because you don't know what kind of tear out you're going to get on your cut.
Mm.
And you should always allow yourself extra room.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to go over here to the table saw. And I'm going to set up to do a rip cut. And again, yes.
Another reason for oversize for these folks, because you always leave a little bit of an overhang. Sometimes that edge gets a little bubbly, and by having it oversized, you make sure you have a solid adhered section to cut away.
Exactly. So another great point is this also depends if you're going to edge band your piece before you actually veneer. So if I was making panels for a cabinet and I needed this to make this panel my final piece, I would before I put the veneer on, I would edge band all of this with wood, okay, all four sides, and then I would lay my veneer over that. So sometimes you can't find the matching wood for your edge band that you want, and sometimes you actually have to use veneer on the edge. And it takes a lot more work to get the veneer, so you would have to fit this to size minus the thickness of 2 pieces of veneer with the glue in order to get your final size panel.
That sounds like an unnecessary hassle in life.
And it's not. So you saw the picture of my tool cabinet that I made. Adrian, swing over real quick. So the tool cabinet that I made for all my hand tools, I edge banded all sides, all 6 sides of each one of those panels. So I did the panels like this, the outside panels first, and then I went back and edge banded it all the way around once I trimmed it to size that I needed.
Okay. So you already trimmed it to size before you put the edge banding on?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Okay, so I'm going to set my table saw fence to cut off just a little bit off of each edge, and then I'll go back and make the final width as we go along. Maintaining my same orientation when I pull them off of the fence. so I know which side I cut. Okay, so now I have 4 1/4. I'm gonna take about another 1/4 inch off of the other side and make all my panels 4 inches wide. And I'm gonna run them all through at the same time so they're all the same width. Okay, so now all my panels are the same width. So I've cut the width. Now I need to go ahead and use my crosscut, my miter gauge for making these cross cuts. So I'll trim this edge off on all 4 pieces, and then I'll match up 2 sides and 2 end pieces. And I'll set the fence up so those are the same for the 2 matching pieces.
It's a weird combo, Doug. A professorial lab coat and cargo pants.
If you knew how hot it was in my garage, you wouldn't be wearing any pants.
Well, thank you for not
So-
doing that.
Yeah.
You're lucky I have something on.
Okay, okay.
Small mercies.
Exactly. So again, when you cut veneer, you want to go really slow in your cuts and let the saw blade work as much as you can for yourself.
Now, I have an addition. There's a 7-inch blade that has a really fine tooth that is a real nice blade to use when you're cutting pieces with veneer, especially with the veneer down.
Exactly, exactly.
I'm sorry, Ian, could you say it again?
Sure. There's a 7-inch blade. I see it online. I'm sorry, I don't remember. It's not a Freud, but it's somebody like that. That has a lot of teeth. It's specifically for cutting super fine cuts like veneer.
Oh, okay. So a lot of fine teeth, a lot of teeth to get a finer cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What's odd is that it's a 7-inch blade that you put in your 10-inch table saw.
Oh, is that right? Huh.
So we're going to cut both of the side panels the same. Now again, every veneer acts different, so I'll give you a show of comparison. This was the second piece that I cut, and I have virtually no tear out here. Okay. On the first piece that I cut, I have a slight amount of tear out along there. Now, how could I avoid that? I could have avoided that by putting a piece of blue tape over the veneer before I cut it. I have no problem sharing my mistakes, and I'll show you in a little bit of why that is on a piece that I'm working on here at the shop.
Doug, are the corners of this going to be beveled edges, or are you going to go square?
I'm gonna show you that in a few minutes.
Okay.
Espérate.
Okay, muy bien.
Again, this doesn't have to be like super precise because both of the ends are going to be the same.
But would you grade us differently if we did a really precise job versus if we didn't?
Absolutely, you might get a D+. If you actually took one of Jim Franz's boxes, because Jim Franz is the box master.
Yeah.
He's like in the same caliber as Doug Stowe, who has published probably 15 books on decorative boxes. His box sizes are all very odd dimensions. I'll give you an example. We took pictures. Jim made us 3 or 4 boxes for the holiday gift sale already.
Yeah.
And we took photos of them this weekend, and I took their measurements, and one was like 5 3/8 in width and like 8 5/8 in length and like 4 1/4 inches tall. So they don't have to be all symmetrical as long as they're all the same size and they're all square.
Huh.
Got to shift the dust collection here because I only have one collector. It's not going to be that way in my next shop, but
I was looking around your shop, and it doesn't look as though you started to pack up to move that shop.
no, there's this president of the guild that keeps bugging me to do these online training events, and I am not able to break down. And
Hey, Doug.
yes,
You got to learn as much as I can before you leave, man.
we will. You and I will share some trade secrets here soon because I have a 22-inch square veneered panel
Yeah.
that I want to use my CNC on and cut a recess for resin.
Oh yeah, perfect.
I'm
Let's do it.
making a buddy of mine, his youngest daughter is getting married this fall, and I'm going to put their names on the table
Yeah.
and the date of the wedding in the center and
Yeah.
fill it in with gold, pearlized gold
Yeah.
resin.
Cool.
So you and I
I'm
will
at your
trade
service, sir.
secrets.
I'm at your service.
Okay. Okay. So you can make a lot of different things with veneer. This is a project that I'm working on here at home now. So you can do different designs with veneer using the same kind of veneer. So this is a checkerboard pattern, but you rotate each piece of veneer 90 degrees. So it gives it a deflection of light when you look across it, and it looks almost like a checkerboard type thing. And then once that was done and I sanded it down, then I went with my trim router and I trimmed this a 1.25 inches away from the edge all the way around. And then I cut this veneer here into the arc that matched this. I made a template.
You made a template the size of the light end grain portion of the table?
Exactly, just like this.
Got it.
So I made a template based on what the cut was here. And then I took a piece of 6-inch veneer and I laid this out. Then I cut that arc. And then I divided this up into 12 segments. And then I cut it at the segment lines. And then I glued it. And then once it was glued, I went and turned it upside down. I cut around the part that was protruding out, and I used that to match the grain of the part that I just glued on, and then the grain pattern carried over from this side to here, and that technique is called waterfall. So the grain will match. You could see here, the grain matches here, and it carries over to the edge right there.
But Doug, when you first put the side portion on, there was a chunk that protruded up above the surface, right?
It not above the surface, away from the edge.
For the edge side, when you put the piece
Yeah.
on the edge, the
Yeah.
portion you cut was sticking up.
It would stick out like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you cut it off, and then the piece that you cut off you used for the side.
Exactly.
Right. And
Exactly.
it was sticking up over the top of the table when you applied it. I'm asking.
No, it was flush with the lighter wood. So this veneer and this veneer are flush when you glue it down. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I will tell you that I made some mistakes on this. And the first mistake I made was I grabbed my trusty Festool sander that I love to use, and I didn't check the grit on the paper.
Uh-oh.
And I had 80 grit on the paper, and I was like, man, this is going really cool. And because when you do veneer like this, there's a little undulation as you go around. And when I went through with the edge, I burned through in about 3 spots. So I burned through the veneer to the MDF core. So then I said, okay, well, I tried these die pins to get it to die, and it just didn't look right. So I ended up having to cut a section away. And what I did was I took the veneer saw and I took my square real quick here. Where's my little square? Come on. Oh, right here. Sorry. So I took my square and I laid it like this. I made a cut with the veneer saw through the veneer, and I went over to the area that I needed to repair, and I took it and I cut it again. And then using hand tools, I used my router plane and set it at the right depth to just pull up veneer off the MDF. And it pulled the veneer off, but it didn't dig into the MDF to create a crater. And then I used the chisel to refine it and get all the residual glue off. And it was a straight line here, a straight line here. Then I just took a piece of scrap veneer and cut it to fit into the groove and whacked glue on it, and works fine, lasts a long time.
Doug, you just
Yes.
gave away the secret on how we could find those flaws. Every place else is a waterfall that matches grain, except
Yes,
there, correct?
exactly. And then of course in the back you put the matching veneer on the side. And so I hope to have this finished up this week, and I'll work on the stand. I don't know if I'm going to get it in time for the furniture accessory because I'm out of town Tuesday. So
Hey,
it's
Doug,
going to be a race. Yes.
before you move on from that, last time you just showed us how you did clamping with veneer on top and bottom. Obviously, you had sides there, and so you probably used your vacuum bag.
No, I did not. I used clamps. Could
Okay.
hand me the piece on top right there. Yes. So when you cut out that circle, okay, and you make it a perfect circle, you have a leftover chunk of MDF that is close to the radius of the arc that you cut out. So you take that and you sand it down smooth and you line it with cork, and then you put some plastic tape over it so the glue doesn't stick. And when you go to glue on each piece, this will match up there and apply the right amount of clamping pressure to your edge piece that you're gluing to the edge. Same thickness, same radius, you just put a clamp across the piece and it holds in the segment until it dries. So I did one about every half hour to 40 minutes. So it took me about, I factored in 15 minutes for each segment to cut it out and lay it out. And then I allowed to, and then to glue it and clamp it. And then I allowed 30 minutes for it to dry. And then I come back and do the next segment.
Okay, so you said there were 12 segments, which means each of those is 30 degrees. And so that particular arc is covers about 30 degrees of the arc. And so you just did one after another, but opposite sides?
The black piece. Yes.
Okay.
So here is my arc. Thanks to Dallas, he made this for me. So that gives me my 30 degrees. So if I was going to use this, so I laid out my layout lines of where my radius was going to be. And then I just aligned that with my veneer. And then I cut my piece here and I cut my piece here. And then whatever was left over in the back portion, I just cut off and then trim that on the sides.
Doug, I just want you to know that that's acrylic and it was laser cut and etched. And there is a role for digital tools in even your life.
Let me tell you, I'm becoming a big fan of digital tools because they complement my woodworking more all the time. When I can make these blanks for my tables, I lay it out in the CNC and it cuts a perfect 16-inch MDF circle, and I just laminate the two. I trim it with my flush trim router. I make templates now with my CNC machine or using the laser.
That's great.
It complements you will find more reasons. Once you understand how the CNC and laser works, it complements your woodworking so much more. It really does.
And you don't mean by what you've said that it stands next to you and says constantly, good job, looking good, well done. That's not what you meant by compliment, right?
No.
Okay.
So the more I learned about CNC, the more you're going to have to learn about veneering.
Okay, it's a deal.
Okay, so now we have our 4 pieces cut. So I have my 2 sides and my 2 front and backs, but I now have to try to join these together. Typically, these will be mitered in a 45, and then maybe they might have splines put in them as a decorative spline. I found a technique that I like to use a lot more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take half of the thickness of this, and these are my front and back. So I will take a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch square out of, I'll make a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch rabbet on each edge of this for my long sides. Okay. And then on my end pieces, I'm going to make another 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch rabbet. So where did it go? Okay. So they will then be able to interlock, and you will see a 1/4 inch of the MDF. You'll be able to see it alongside the veneer. Now, after we get the whole box glued up all the way around, what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the router and we're going to router this little bit out here to about 3/16 of an inch thick. And we're going to put a 3/16 by 3/16 square piece of mahogany, and we're going to hide that edge. And
Oh,
that's
cool.
what we're going to cover next week,
Cool.
is how to hide that joint. But for today, we are going to, okay, I'm okay on time. So we're going to go ahead and rabbet these, okay? And then we're going to dry fit them to make sure that we're all square. And then we're going to glue this box up. And then I hope we have time, we're going to cut the bottom. Now the bottom is going to show all the way around. So we're going to make a 1/4 inch rabbet all the way around. So when this sits here, you'll see a exposed portion of the Baltic birch all the way around the whole bottom. I'll show you. Push the I believe button.
Okay.
Okay. So
Doug, you're using the terms plywood and MDF almost interchangeably. You could really be using either.
So great point, Neil. Neil, right?
Yes.
Okay. So the table that I showed you, I used MDF. That's actually my favorite substrate to use with veneer, but I don't have to make any joinery on it. Because I'm making joinery on this, I like to use Baltic birch. Now, we have a really proficient, we have actually a master craftsman in our shop that teaches veneer classes, Peter Shellbecker, great guy. He strictly uses Baltic birch. And interestingly, he doesn't use the veneer glue like I use. He just uses regular yellow glue and he waters it down 10 to 20%. And he said he's never had the veneer come off. So, you know, different things for different people. So I don't know.
Hey, Doug, just so that people can appreciate how talented he is, where did he teach for how many years?
He taught at the Center for Craftsmanship up in Maine for like
Yeah.
12 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Real talent.
the guy is super talented. And he's an all-around great guy to talk to, too. Really easy to talk to. Okay, I'm going to turn on the dust collector real quick here. I'm going to put this block in the back to help avoid tear out. $225. Okay, we're there. I don't like that short block. Okay. Okay, so now I have my front and back. Now I have to cut my sides. So when I cut my sides, ideally, these are going to fit right inside of here.
Could you have the camera tilted down just a little bit so we can see what you're doing? Oh, got it. Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to make a test cut, a little bit of a test cut to make sure that I have my dimensions right. Okay, you can see that I need to go a little bit deeper. So I'm gonna raise the router bit up a little bit at a time until I get the right cut. Matter of fact, to make sure that I'm doing it correctly, I'm gonna make the cut all the way across, go back, make my adjustment, and test it again. Because this is a critical cut. Need to adjust my speed on my router a little bit. Oh, didn't get all the way through. Gotta go all the way through. Okay. So did I? Okay. So guess what I did? I made a mistake. I cut it on the wrong side. So how do we fix that?
Narrow the drawer.
All right.
Will it work on the other end?
Oh,
No,
good one.
because this is the inside and this is the outside. So how do we fix this?
It's a smaller box.
A little bit off the edge of each box. Exactly. So that's why you have to pay close attention to what you're doing. Not get distracted by the president. Okay, let's try this again. So I have my rabbits here. My lighter veneer is in the inside. I need to put the lighter face veneer down on the table. Light veneer down. Try this again. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. But I'm still a little bit proud here. So what I need to do is I need to raise this cut up a little bit because I want this side flush with here. Getting closer. I'm about a 16th off. This is one of those cuts you have to just sneak up on. Just a little bit.
Doug, can you show us where you're going to end up putting that mahogany?
Yes. So this is still a 64th high, but when the box is all glued up, I'm then going to rabbet out this area and this area square, just like I'm making these cuts. I'm going to make on the outside here, okay? And then it will replace all of this right here. And the mahogany strips will hide the edge of this Baltic birch. Make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Okay. I just need to go up another 64th of an inch here. Okay. I think we're going to be okay there.
Hey, Doug,
Yes.
you've just given us time to sort of contemplate what we're seeing in our video here. And there's an anonymous question from the audience, which is, are you wearing slippers in the shop?
I cannot confirm to deny. But
Hey, at least they're closed-toed, right?
that is true. They are closed toed. But yes, I am wearing my slippers. I'm in my own shop. I'm comfortable.
And you should throw on a "damn it" on the end there.
That's okay. Great question. I'm glad people are being that observant.
Well, I'm just pleased that nobody has commented on your legs yet.
Huh. That was Pete's thing when he was on there the other day.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm flush here. But I'm concerned because I have a gap on the inside.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so how do I fix that?
Shorten the extension, I guess.
What if I take a little bit more of this material off
Yeah.
here?
Yeah, that'll do it. Hey, Doug, what power do you have in your garage for your shop?
I have 110 and 220.
Single phase on the 220?
Yes. So I have 220 for my table saw and my Big Bertha bandsaw.
Got it.
Okay.
Looks good.
Not enough not close enough yet.
Okay.
So we're going to have to come up a little more on these pieces even. One more pass. Okay, what's going on here? We're going to have to find out what's going on here. This is not working out right.
Given what we've seen in the past, I would have thought you, Doug Lesnar, would have written like 1A, 1B, and all sorts of things in pencil around there.
So yes. So I think what it is the fence is not allowing it for a totally square cut.
Oh.
So I have a good joint right here. But on the other ones, I don't. So I think on that note, I'm probably going to have to spend a couple of hours tweaking these in. But I just wanted to demonstrate real quick what I was going to have to do.
Can I ask a quick question, Doug?
Yes.
If you put the box together as is, and then just cut a 45-degree angle on all four corners and put a flat piece of mahogany on the corners, trimmed it off, wouldn't you get exactly the same finish?
Not really, because you're talking about a fat piece of mahogany, and I don't really want to use a fat piece of mahogany. I just want to use a small trim.
No, the piece of mahogany I'm talking about would be,
No. Mahogany, back, right there.
okay,
So this is about the size of the trim we're going to use right here.
yeah.
Okay. So this is going to cover this
Nice.
like that. Okay.
You route that out after it's all glued up and dried?
Absolutely. Okay. So I don't want to pain you to try to figure out what I'm trying to do here. I have to go back and diagnose this and find out what's going on. But I'm going to show you roughly what we're doing is we're taking these square clamps.
Same as on the small hanging wall cabinet, right?
Exactly. It's noise canceling. They can't hear it. Mr. Producer asked me to turn my dust collector off.
Doug, I was going to ask you if you get a chance between now and next session, if you could draw up that joint, how you're doing the routing and kind of how that would all fit together. I think it might be clearer to me what you're doing.
Sure, I could definitely do that.
So Doug, this is Rob. Is that supposed, are you trying to put a rabbet lock joint on the ends there?
Pretty close, yeah.
Because they have the article there in Woodworker's Journal on how to do that, and so
I've built boxes like this. I have just never had this much trouble
sure.
getting the. There is something off.
Yes, because we're watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, there is that too, but anyhow.
Hey, Doug, that's just threaded rods, wing nuts, and did you cut those corner pieces yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course,
So-
a real digital guy like Travis would make those out of plastic. So 3D printed.
You laugh about that, but
I'm serious.
I went down to San Diego Plastics and I bought a block of PVC that's 2 inches thick, and I have these in PVC.
Right. Well, you did it with a CNC though, right?
No, but I'm going to.
I was talking about a 3D printer.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm not going that far. So, yes,
A step
Travis,
too far, huh?
these are just like 1.5 inch square hard maple, okay? But the critical part is getting these inside corners square,
Yeah.
okay? And then you just drill a hole through one side, and then the other side, you drill a hole about halfway through, and you take a tap, and you tap a 1/4-20 tap.
Yep.
You take this threaded rod and thread it into it,
Got it.
and
Got
you
it.
make a square. This is all of about $7 of the material.
Got it. Good. Thank
The
you.
most expensive part was a threaded rod,
Yeah.
but they are super accurate for gluing up these boxes like this right here.
Have you ever
Okay.
done one for a hexagonal as well?
I am not. Chris, don't challenge me like that.
That would be a Chris question, though.
It would be, yes. Yes. Okay. Questions so far, other than I didn't get done what I wanted done tonight.
Can you just tell us the next stages? There's the base. Are we gonna have a hinged top?
We're going to have a hinge top. Okay. So after the box is glued up, okay. And great point. I'll make up, now our next session is actually 5 August. Okay, so put that on your calendars. It normally would have been 29 July, but we have a general meeting that night, so we'll move it to the following Wednesday. So 5 August is our next session. To answer your question, yes. So we would trim this box. This is the bottom. We're going to get a little more decorative on the top with this. So this is the inside and this is the outside. So with this being the bottom, once this box is glued up, I would then cut this to size on the outside dimension of the box and then make that 1/4 inch rabbet all the way around. And then this would set onto my bottom like this, okay? And it would actually recess into my box,
Okay.
okay? Then I would do the top the very same. So we're gonna glue up the top next week, but we're gonna embellish the top a little bit and not have it just plain. We're gonna put a little bit of a border around the outside, and we're gonna work on miters, how to do miter cuts on a box with a little bit of banding on the outside. I'll try to squeeze it in as much as I can in an hour. Now the top, we're gonna put in a vacuum bag. Go ahead. Ask her question. Travis, you had a question?
Well, always.
Okay. Go ahead, please, please.
Why did you choose to not use a vacuum bag this last go around? Was it simply because you were going to use you're going to do 2 surfaces, one atop the other, and it was just easier with flat panels and cauls?
I demonstrated 3 types of clamping systems. One was with just 2 pieces of plywood.
Yeah.
That we laminated with grocery bags to keep the glue from sticking to the plywood. Brown paper bags.
Got it.
Okay. I'm being distracted by the producer here. Sorry. Brown paper bags, and then laminating them with the, well, I have them right here. Hang on. So we just used 2 pieces of plywood, put brown paper down, put the piece that we're laminating right in here, brown paper on top, another piece of plywood, and put 6 clamps all the way around. That got me this nice adhesion of the veneer to my substrate here. The other technique we used was 2 scrap pieces of melamine, okay? Here, I didn't need the plastic, not the plastic bag, the paper bag, because the glue is not going to stick to the melamine. Right. So I just glued up my 2 pieces, or my veneer on both sides of my substrate, slapped it on here, put the clamps on, bam, overnight, they're dry. The third method is what we'll demonstrate next week, the next session, and that is the vacuum bag. So they have all different size of vacuum bags. They go from 2 foot by 2 foot to 4 foot by 12 foot. I have a 2 foot by 4 foot, and it does 98% of the work that I need.
Yeah.
We have at the shop, we have a 4 by 4 bag and a 4 by 8 bag. Okay, so feel free to come in and use the shop's press, because they have a veneer press that is off the charts at the shop that we could use also.
Great.
Okay, next question, Travis.
No, let's see. Ian's got his mic off. He should ask a question. Neil's got his mic off. He should ask a question. Chris has already asked plenty of questions.
Okay.
I've got 2 more though.
Go for it.
Yes,
Chris.
yes, please.
Firstly, could you veneer the inside of the MDF for all of the sides and top and bottom, and then put it together, and then veneer the outside?
Yes.
And would that make life easier?
It depends on how you assemble your project. So you can veneer the front and back and glue your whole project up, and then come back and put veneer here and veneer here after it's assembled.
Okay.
But here's what I will tell you. You will see a seam. There will be a seam there, and it will maybe not look like you want. So after we put the bottom on, okay, we're going to make the top very much like the bottom, and we're going to glue this so you can't even see the inside of the box. Then what we're going to come down and do is we're going to cut the top off on the table saw. So we're going to come 1 inch, 1.25 inches down from here. And we're going to go all the way around this whole box and cut the top off.
Very nice.
And then when the two parts are separated, you're going to see the Baltic birch, but we're going to hide that with our mahogany. So we're going to have a lip of mahogany all the way around, about this thick. It's probably 3/32 thick. We're going to have this all the way around the top of the bottom box and the bottom of the top of the lid.
Yeah.
So you're going to have decorative mahogany not only on the strips on the side to hide the edge of the Baltic birch, but you're going to hide the top of the Baltic birch on the lid and the bottom also.
Well, you're getting all sorts of beautiful edge definition with a darker wood in the mahogany. That's going to look great.
That's what's great about mahogany is it gives you so many more options for decorative elements.
Yeah.
You know, we're so ingrained in walnut, maple, cherry, red oak, maybe some white oak, you know, maybe beech. But when you get into mahogany, look at the figure and the grain that you could work with.
Yeah.
There's over 220 different species of veneer.
Wow.
And you go to Joe Woodworker right now, tomorrow he starts free shipping on orders over $150.
Doug,
Okay.
you've already had me spend so much money
I'm
Joe
sure,
Woodworker. I'm not going to
sure
revisit it again right now.
I'm sure Mrs. Good is not happy with me, but let me give you an example. So this is how it comes bundled up. So in here, I have strips that are 7 inches wide and they're 120 inches long. That's 10 feet long. And I have 6 strips of 2 different species of veneer. This is a package that it comes in. It's rolled up like this.
Was this the remnants that you were talking about where you get the last of a supply?
The bargain basement and Joe Woodworker, right now, he has a bunch of figured maple, bird's eye maple that he's trying to get rid of. Anywhere from 1 to 4 sheets. They're all less than $30, and it's just stunning figure. But you know, you can get a couple, 3 guys to go together and place an order, and if you get over $150, the shipping's free.
Right.
But I will tell you, the shipping, like on that package right there, the shipping was only $15. So it's not as bad as you think.
Cool.
But I would definitely check out his website. Another one is Certainly Wood. They're out of New Jersey. They have a beautiful selection of veneer.
Certainly would.
Yes. Yep.
I have
Another
one
really
serious
cool
question though, Doug.
Yes.
I've just bought a vacuum pack for excess food that I can put in the fridge. Could
Yes.
I persuade my wife that I should buy a vacuum pack for my woodworking and
You
use it to,
You don't have to use a different one. So the vacuum seal bags that you use to seal up your food, as long as you keep your panels less than 8 inches wide, you could get your panel inside plus a thin caul. Hang on just a second here. And I will show you that I've used this, Chris, in the vacuum seal press. So one of the things when you do under a vacuum system is you have to be able to have the air move all around a piece. So what we do is we create these things called cawls. So the cawls have small grooves in them that we cut up with a table saw. So this is 1/8" melamine that I cut up to the size of my panels. So it's just like melamine. I don't need to put anything underneath. I put my substrate, I glue my veneer on. I put this down like this where the air can get around the outside here. I put this on top, the air can get around the top. I slide this into my vacuum bag, and then I, of course, seal one end, just like you would the food, and then I turn it around and I make another segment, maybe 6 inches longer, and I put that under vacuum, and it's gonna collapse around this just like a veneer press would. So it gets 21 to 23 inches of vacuum on that bag. And after it seals and the little light comes on, you put the heat strip and you seal it across the top. You let it set overnight and you come out and it's gonna hold just like this overnight. Yes, you can't, you can borrow it for an afternoon and your wife won't even miss it. Just try it. Just try a piece of, you know, scrap veneer and a scrap piece of substrate, and just get your process down so you know how to do that.
Okay. So
Absolutely.
Doug, 2 questions.
Yes.
Question number 1 is, Chris asked about the veneering process, but let's say you wanted to veneer all the inside edges, which are going to come together without any exposed wood, right? Could you do that and leave the outside pieces non-veneered, and then after you get done, apply the veneer with some kind of vacuum bag or something, so you don't have any of those seams and you don't have to work around putting the mahogany and all of that other stuff? Would that work or not?
Great question, Rob. So there is a recent article on fine woodworking by one of our local heroes named Craig Thibodeau, and he does that very same thing. So he'll veneer the inside, okay? He'll cut up his pieces, he'll miter the edges, put his whole box together, and then after the box is together, then he'll apply the outside veneer on the outside. Now, you can't put that in a vacuum bag, because if you do, you'll collapse the box.
Oh.
It's that strong. So what you have to do is you have to use a cawl, just like this. So he'll make a thicker cawl like I had to show you at the start. He'll have a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch cawl, and he'll clamp that all the way around and let the veneer settle that way under the cawl. Now, I will tell you, interestingly, how every craftsman has a different technique. Craig likes to use Gorilla Glue. So he'll take Gorilla Glue on the outside of this. He'll take Gorilla Glue with the roller brush. Hand me that roller right there, yellow roller. Thank you. So he'll take a roller just like this, and he'll put the Gorilla Glue all over the top of this, and he'll use a roller and spread it out. Then he'll put the veneer on, Mr. Blue Tape, hold it in place, and put the cawl over the top of this, and then just clamp it with clamps all the way around. So it's veneering is not any one process. One of our other mentors in our club, Bob Stevenson, a great veneer craftsman. He is recognized by the Society of American Furniture, won numerous awards for his furniture. Some of his pieces are in the Smithsonian. So Bob only uses hide glue. So he has a pot, a 1-pint pot that he heats up and makes his own hide glue. And then he takes a brush and brushes that on before it cools and applies his veneer that way. So there's many different kinds of ways you can apply veneer to a substrate. In the old days, they used pine or poplar to put as a substrate for the veneer. But what's wrong with that? It could move
Yeah.
in seasonal shifts. Now, the veneer glue that I showed you, it has a 45-minute set time is why I like to use it. So I don't really even have to let it set overnight. So I could put it under press for an hour. I usually like to leave it for 2 hours, and I could go back and I could route it and sand it and work with it.
How much working time do you have though before it starts to?
10 to 15 minutes
Okay.
before it starts to tack up. Yeah,
That's always my problem, is the working time.
yeah.
So
Rob, did you have a second question?
I did. I had a second question. So I liked your explanation about the food saver bags. I hadn't even contemplated that. I thought you were joking with Chris.
No.
But
Yeah.
now it makes sense. So if you wanted to play with that a little bit, you could actually just take your bandsaw and make your own veneer out of some of your scrap wood if you had some walnut or something else. And just
Rob, I'm glad you said that. So we have had a donation of wood from the lumber cycle here in National City, and we have a piece of figured sycamore that I bandsawed up and was making some boxes with, and I had a piece about a strong 1/16 of an inch thick. So I took that, cut off, and I ran it through the sander, and I made my own thick veneer. Now, when you make your own veneer, on average, you make it 60 thousandths to 85 thousandths for a veneer when you make your own veneer. But there's nothing saying that you can't make your own veneer with a bandsaw. Like you said, Rob, run it through the sander, okay, and apply it just like you would the commercial veneer. The commercial veneer is only 30 to 35 thousandths thick. With this, you don't have to worry so much about burn through as what I do here.
Is there a rule about veneer? In other words, could you make it 1/8, 1/16, 1/62?
You really don't want to get more than 3/32 thick, because then it starts acting like wood itself and it starts to move on its own.
Causes problems with adhesion over long term and stuff.
It does. Not only adhesion, but it's wood movement that is going to affect what you do. See here, I forgot to show you this part when I took it out of the press. Don't forget, we had to glue two pieces of veneer together,
Right.
and to make this wide enough. So, I mean, looking at that panel, can you tell where the glue line is?
Nope. No,
It's
looks
really
good.
it's really good seam.
I'm going to show you. The glue line is right here.
Yeah.
And you could really only tell because of the variation in the veneer.
Yeah.
Same thing here, okay? Here's my glue line right here. But unless I really pointed it out, you wouldn't see a glue line. Now, when you start working with your own veneer and you go to glue this and it starts to get too thick, then it's going to move on you and it gets harder to work with if it gets more than 3/32 thick. What they teach in Palomar is 65 thousandths is the optimum thickness for the veneer. This is about 68 thousandths right now. So I'm actually going to put this on a piece of MDF and find some purpose for it, because I love the grain. I don't know if you can see the variation of the grain.
Yeah, it's pretty distinct.
I love the grain in this, and it come out of a sycamore tree.
It kind of reminds me of that Claro walnut we had for those cheese boards.
Exactly.
So well.
Exactly. Yep. So yes, great question, Rob. You can't easily make your own veneer. And with the resaw that we have set up in the shop, oh my God, you take a piece of 2-inch walnut and you could make 16th inch passes all day long and come out with 8 or 10 pieces of veneer out of that 2-inch chunk of walnut.
Hey, Doug, one more
Great question. Yes.
One more question for you. You know, whenever we're talking about the applying a veneer, it seems as though we're really talking about using the clamping and the bags for the broad surfaces. You did have the special clamping for your round table, but when you do the edge banding, you don't ever use the bag, or does the bag not add the right pressures to make the edges adhere? Does it not add the pressure you need on the edges?
So, great question. I'm glad you brought that up. So when they redid the shop, they had a bunch of leftover sections of the butcher block tabletop.
Yeah, yeah.
So I took those and made 2-inch strips. And what is good about them is the strength.
Yeah.
No matter how much clamping pressure I put on them, they're not going to bow. And I actually learned this trick from Pete Schellbecker. And he lined this with blue tape and then put a piece of plastic over it so the glue won't stick. So when you go to glue, edge glue your panel,
Yeah.
you put the piece of veneer on here, you put it here with a clamp, and you just use clamps on each side. These are called cauls,
Yeah.
C-U-L, cauls. So whenever I did my hand tool cabinet, I just took 2 sides and I applied my glue. I put my little strip of veneer on, you know, maybe 7/8 or 1 inch wide. And I put it on, put tape on to hold it. I put my cauls on and I let it sit overnight, and it's rock solid.
Okay.
So typically it's really hard to do with a vacuum press. And here's why, Travis, because the vacuum bag will want to come over and bend over the edge
Yeah.
of the veneer and want to crush the veneer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you would rather cut that flush with a straight edge razor or a scalpel and not have to worry about the vacuum bag crushing it. That's why we use the cauls on the edges. Great question.
I had one more for you, which was,
Yes.
go back to the very first table that you showed us today. When you applied the edge veneer and it was sticking up above the surface of the table, you were going to have to cut that flush. So the part I'm talking about is where your fingers are on your left hand.
Okay.
That side there, yeah. When that was put on, it was probably protruding above and or below the surface of the table. And what did you do to cut the edge? Did you then just lay it on its side like a wheel and then use a scalpel, or did you use your
Exactly.
veneer
So
knife?
after it stuck out, like this is about the size of the piece that I use.
Yeah.
I put it on here, and then after it dried, I turned this over and I used the scalpel and I trimmed around this with the scalpel.
Okay.
Okay. And you don't have to get it perfect, because when I get done, okay, I then come back with a sanding board. I have 120 on one side and 180 on the other. I even mark them on the ends so I don't forget what my grits are. So when I do that, I just come gently back with this and I make it flush.
Okay.
And then I take my cutoff piece and then I square up the end. Trying to think. Hang on just a second, Travis. I want to show you. Hand me that piece of veneer right there, please. So this is the veneer that I use.
Okay.
Let's say that this is the cutoff arch here, okay? I would take that cutoff and I would use my square and I would make this square across here. And then I would then come and lay out my triangle of where I need, because I would need a piece wider than this, because from this point to the very end, I need about 2 1/4, 2.5 inches here.
Okay.
Okay. So I would line up my marks here that I had, and that's just the radius. So all that is just the radius of the circle here.
Okay.
And I would line it up on my straight cut that I did. I would take the scalpel and I would cut it here. and I would cut it here. And then that would give me my 30-degree segment. And then I would just come back here and I would line that up with the edge with my straight cut.
Yep.
And I would just glue that. Okay.
Yep.
So what I do is I mark out with a pencil line where my 30-degree segment's going to go. And I'll put a piece of tape on one end that I'll butt the veneer up to.
Okay.
And then I'll carry this past my next mark, but I'll put another piece of blue tape here, and then I spread glue in between those two pieces of tape
Yep.
of where my segment's going to go, and I'll let this overlap. And then when I go to cut this to size it to fit, I just cut it to where that blue line is.
Yes, using the blue tape as a guide.
That blue tape is a guide. Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, that seems tough, man.
Great questions. No, it's not. You know, I thought that too. It's like, I'm never going to be able to do this. I could teach you how to do this in 30 minutes. Honestly.
You do that when you're in Dayton.
Zoom. That's what they have Zoom for, right?
There you go. All right.
So Doug, when you said the way you did that was with the scalpel, I heard Travis ask.
Yes.
I would have been tempted because I'm just a power tools kind of guy. I would have been tempted to whip out my trim router and put a flush trim bit on there and do that. And obviously that's not the best way to do it, or you would have said something about that. So what's the danger in that?
So you don't want, this veneer is very fragile. If you try to touch that with a trim router and a flush trim bit, you're going to shatter the shit out of the veneer.
Is that a technical term?
Yeah,
absolutely.
It got through to me.
Yeah.
I understood it.
So again, you want to use a scalpel because just like a surgeon, you have very precise control of to where that cut's going to be.
But I don't have a scalpel. Now I got to go buy one.
It's there. You know how much this is, Rob? This is $8 for the base, and you get a pack of these blades. You get like 50 of them for like $13.
Yeah.
So for $20, you're going to have your veneering tool for 5 years.
Yeah,
Rob,
I was teasing. Travis knows how much money I've spent on tools.
I was going to say, that's why you're still working, Rob, just so you can buy all these things.
Absolutely. So I'm retired and I have a tool budget.
There you go.
I spend on average, no kidding, about $2,500 a year on tools.
Wow.
That's my budget for the year.
That's just Travis's 3D printers and lasers. And stuff like that.
So you can tell why I'm power tool poor, Rob.
Right.
I'm trying to get Travis to go to the Lee Nielsen hand tool event at Palomar this next year.
That was costly.
Yes.
You got me to go there, Doug. That was tough.
And I always end up spending between $400 and $700 when I go. It's
wow.
But they have incredible savings and they have incredible tools. They really
it's
do.
It's like a 20% savings when you're buying it at the show, isn't it?
You do. No tax.
They didn't give us savings. They gave it tax free and free shipping. That was all they did this last time.
Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Oh, okay.
Ian was there with me. Ian talked me into a smaller little hand plane, didn't you, Ian?
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And yeah, I have it automatically deducted from my paycheck each week and shoved into the account as my tool budget. Yes.
Just don't let the wife know about that. Yes.
Actually, if anybody's ever heard my CNC presentation, I talked about how you get your better half to want you to have these tools.
Once you start making your amazing first project, it's like, God, honey, this was so cool. Thanks for the tools you bought me. But if you got me this, I could do a little bit more. You know, you have to make it enticing.
Yeah, I like Howard's joke that he's told a couple of times about the only thing he hopes is that his wife doesn't sell the tools after he dies for what he told her he paid for them.
I haven't heard
That's a great line. That's a great line.
This was great, Doug. Wow.
Okay, guys, any more questions? great questions on veneer. Thank you so much for asking these, because by no means am I a veneer expert, but I'm glad I could share my mistakes with you. So hopefully you won't make your own when you start to explore the world of veneering.
We'll make different ones.
It's really a great area to get into, and there's so much you could do with veneering. There really is. Stunning, stunning projects.
Great.
Travis, will you allow me to share my screen?
Sure, of course. Let me turn that on.
And then Doug, I have a question.
Okay,
Okay, you can go ahead and do it.
let me get to where I can see the screen. Excuse me.
Oh, whoa.
Okay, so the guy that made this is,
Me.
you made
I
this?
I made that.
Oh, very nice. Excellent job.
Hey,
Thank
Ian,
you.
you should have waited to see what in the world Doug had to say.
So the
Oh, I know,
band,
because there was an article in Fine Woodworkers magazine. I saw it. and it said,
Exactly.
"Pick one."
exactly. So the guy that created this concept is Canadian, and he's got an Italian last name. He's a great veneer craftsman. But see the edge banding? That's exactly what we're going to do to our box.
yeah, I was looking real familiar. Yeah.
Yes,
But is that
exactly.
veneer, or is that just glued blocks?
No, it's what it is. So those are veneers, handmade veneers. I basically got all the different materials, created each one was a handmade veneer, and then made a block with all those layers, and then sliced them in different angles, and then, to get the pieces, and
Yeah,
then would cut those pieces, and then you put it all together.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
Exactly.
But
Way
the
cool.
but the edging is what I wanted to talk about. So the way I did this one is that I built the box first, all the way, and then routed out the corner, all the edges. And the last thing I did was the little piece between the lid and the main box.
That's essentially what we're doing is, but you probably mitered the box when you put it together. All we're doing different is we're using rabbets to put the box together instead of miters. That's the only difference.
Geez, Ian, it would have been the scariest thing in the world to put that router to route out those corners.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, after all the time of making all this to get to
No
that,
kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. and there's some really tight little joints on those little sticks on the edges. But
Yes. Yeah.
but it's as I watched Doug trying to put those rabbet joints together on the edge, I'd run into that problem. So this wasn't my first attempt.
Oh. And
Exactly.
Ian, this is its best face, right?
No, no.
It looks phenomenal, man. Very, very impressive.
We're not going to have anything that awesome, but the concept is basically going to be the same.
Excellent. Whew.
But again,
What a team.
we're just going back and forth talking about, again, this is not about the project itself, but how to use the techniques of veneering
Yeah.
to build a project.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay. Any more questions? Great questions, guys.
Sounds like no more questions.
Okay. Well, Travis, you'll get my bill for overtime here soon.
Okay. See you on August 5, buddy. Thank you.
Yeah. Please, again, general meeting on July 29th. So 2 weeks from today, we're having our general meeting. Please don't miss it. It's really great to see all the interaction with everybody. The chat room explodes. We get a lot of great comments and questions in the chat room. And I'm sure it's going to be another great program. And then the following Wednesday, August 5th, we're going to come back and work on our box. Okay?
And Chris, nobody's going to count how many glasses of wine, okay? Just so you know.
Timing was perfect.
Exactly. Exactly.